So today's is death, if you couldn't tell from the picture. And in the previous one, in the hangman, we left the hero hanging helpless over an abyss to endure a spiritual death and the dismemberment of his previous life and personality. And here we see this dismemberment. His former ideas symbolized by the heads, his standpoints depicted by the feet, and the activities shown by the hands, and they all lie useless. Every aspect of the hero's former life has been obliterated. Even his central guiding principle, shown in the head wearing the crown, indicates the kingly charioteer will no longer rule his destiny. But in death, there is renewal. We see that in the new sprouts coming up everywhere, colored yellow and blue, symbolic of intuition and spirit. These are the attributes of man's inner nature, inner psychic nature. However, it will take some time before the hero can recollect and remember himself. His old personality and ways are so mutilated that he is all but unrecognizable. Edinger said that dismemberment may be understood psychologically as a transformative process that divides up the original unconscious contents for purpose of conscious assimilation. For the alchemist, the skeleton symbolized the necessity to loosen the identification with the body. Alchemists call this period of black mourning, I don't know about the pronunciation on this, mortificatio, the amputation of an unconscious reaction, the loss of a rigid projection which served a tottering ego. This is the blessing and transformation of this step. Until we entrust ourselves to death, we never really entrust ourselves to life. We remain trapped in the body, trapped in egocentricity. Shakespeare dramatized this idea in King Lear. There, the central character facing death on the heath finally accepts that his hand smells of mortality. And in so doing, he becomes at last every inch a king. To accept the fact that you perish in time, says Jung, is a sort of victory over time. Through accepting his physical mortality, Lear transcended the limitations of earthly time. Bursting out of his ego's self, he stepped into the timeless world of the immortals. For the hangman, to take the next step, he must go through the valley of shadow to the acceptance of death. Primitive religious ceremonies often required the initiate to face death. If the demand for self-knowledge is willed by fate and is refused, this negative attitude may result in spiritual death. If we cannot bear being the hangman, upside down in relation to our former activities, if we force our energies into outworn patterns, we may simply fade away spiritually and bodily. To successfully take this irrevocable step means that we will never return to the same life that we felt at ease in before. You will be a stranger to family and friends. That's today's.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that it is so beautiful. That's just beautiful. Mortificatio is a alchemical stage in the alchemy, and also it's reminiscent of Vasilisa the Beautiful and the Mortar and Pestle. I mean that it's an idea that something. There is, and this is so important that in our dreams, we don't ever take them literally, because there's no such thing as death in dreams. I'm going to talk about this in a second, the difference between the technician and the shaman in therapy a little bit. and the fact that the real therapist, or the best therapist, is one who's a combination of a shaman and a technician, which kind of I was alluding to yesterday, Fabio, that you seem to be both. While I really am not a technician. I can't really deal with the outer world very well, so that's why I could not be much help to anyone on a practical level. But anyway, I wanted to just, as long as we got this theme going here, I wanted to show something that was from the, oh geez, I wanted to show this from the today's images, is this image here, the one of the uncomfortable tree. Okay, now the uncomfortable tree is this one of this tension. There are 6 vultures pulling up, and there are 6 arms pulling down. And he mentions that the vulture, is the bird of the great mother, of the divine feminine. Is her bird is the vulture, and it's very important image. One place that in fact the place to see this is in Çatalhöyük, in what was Anatolia, which was a part at one point of the Greek or the people of the Indo-Aryans. It was more related to it was this land that was between Persia and Greece, and it sort of had the merits of each side. But anyway, it is you're going to find more things in Eastern Europe and Anatolia, more beautiful things. But this is just a picture of Çatalhöyük right here, where the vulture is and the great mother are the great symbols, the symbol of death. Now, and the rebirth of life, and it's shown pretty much in this thing here, which is what they would call excarnation, where the vultures would come and they would excarnate the dead, and then they would so they're the divine birds of the great mother. These are the somewhat the angelic birds of the Marita Gimbutas, wrote that beautiful book about the mother goddess religions. Here she is in all her beauty, with her accompanying lions. I mean, that's the great mother. This was also from Çatalhöyük, and my plumber, his last name was Höyük. I always ask him if he wants to, if he was related to this area. But then they would put the somehow it's related to this in the shrine. They would then take the excarnated bodies and put them here in this shrine, which you can actually see here is this is a reconstruction of the shrine, from Çatalhöyük. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but so the vulture as a creature of the great mother, is this creature, is the gatekeeper, travels between worlds, the underworld and mediumship skills, breaking free of limitations, and related to birth, death, and rebirth. It's interesting too that the only place you're going to hear of resurrection and not rebirth is in Christianity. That's a very strange concept in religion, is the resurrection of a carnal form. You know, it's very unusual. Now, I'm just going to show if you wanted to have a pillow with these images, they sell a pillow. Wouldn't that be nice to sleep on? You know, and or you can get a wall decoration of it. You know, but now also the harpies and the sirens were really related to the vulture. You know, they were vultures, harpies and sirens, you know, who were a feminine form, yet they were related to somewhat the more, you know, the aspect of the mother, which is so important in Kali, you know, and Hecate, and you know, it's a very important figure of death in religion, you know. And I mean, you express that so beautifully, Gary. I wonder if you could put the link to it. I would just love to read it again. But anyway, we're just going to try to get through. Now, I wanted to say something about this book. You remember how much fun we had going through the fairy tales? You know, and the reason we had so much fun going through the fairy tales is because there was always a resolution. You know, when you're going through this thing, there is no friggin' resolution ever. You know, I mean, it's just constant uh, 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 hanging in suspension. You know, so we'll go back to the fairy tales, but I think it's a good idea to see. And the other thing I want to say about this is that Jung was no theoretician. It is just amazing how all of everything he writes about are his Edward Edinger called him the greatest intuitive thinker who ever lived. And the reason he was is because he took the images of dreams, which he, you know, they add the wordless medium of expression to, and then the to find the third symbol through logos. You find what is the synthesis of the thinking function, not in its modern sort of distorted logic, rational way, but the thinking, symbolic thinking, intuitive thinking. That's intuitive. You know, there's directed thinking and then there's symbolic thinking. They're both thinking, you know. And the thinking of the woman we learned in the fairy tales is through brooding and incubating, through sleeping on it. That is the way, and through sorting seeds, the intimate, close at hand way, not the abstract way of the logos, which is too abstract, too far, where the feminine thinking is near at hand. You know, but anyway, everything that comes up here, you know, the one thing I want to mention, a couple of the things that we were stumbling over last time were the idea of the Contra Sexual that he brought up. I think when I brought up that, I thought a lot of glassy eyes, but you know, this is I've actually saved the wrong thing. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Yeah. This is the one I wanted here. Save that one. Is and this is something I've experienced. You know, there is a lot of people I deal with who are you know, tend or are you know, are identify as you know, as gay, you know, and they seem to be more focused in their inner work on the shadow than you know. And I'm always somewhat puzzled. Why are you so interested in the shadow? Well, one of the reasons I'm not interested in it is because I don't even know where it is. You know, I am so unconscious, you know, really, of the shadow. It's incredible. But I mean, this idea of the cross cousin marriages. Now, her problem was this, is that she so identified with her masculine aspect. And this was something Jung drew. See, the adept or the alchemist and his soror mystica, his mystical sister, are at the top. Now, the soror mystica or the mystical sister has her own animus, you know, and the alchemist has his anima. Yet if he's going to have a relationship, if a man is going to have a relationship with a woman, he's not only going to have to deal with his partner, his feminine partner, but he's also going to have to deal with her animus. At the same time, he's dealing with her anima, where she is not only dealing with him, but she has to deal with his anima and her animus. And so this idea, what Jung was saying, and it's not theoretical at all, is that if a person tends to identify with the consciousness of their that gender that is not their biological gender, he says it tends to involve a lot of difficulties with the shadow, and also with unconscious intrusions sometimes, you know, and that's what she was experiencing. That's what was Adler's point, you know. And the other one is going to come up in just a bit, is the one of that until we can integrate, until the man can integrate the anima, he will not meet the wise old man. He will only have intuitions of him. And until the woman can integrate the higher animus within her, she won't have a direct-to-direct one-on-one relationship with the wise old woman, but she will have intuitions of her, you know. So the idea is, you see, you have the woman and her inner self, which is the wise old woman, and the intermediary is a polarity, the animus. Okay, and until so the bridge between her inner center, inner psychic center, and her outer psychic center, is her ego, is contra sexual. It's a polarity, and it is the bridge is a polarity to this. You can't have two positive things in direct contact with each other. They repel each other, you know. So you have to have this intermediary. And it'll be the same thing with the man. His inner center, his outer center is his masculine consciousness. His inner center is the wise old man. So that, you know, the self, it sort of differentiates itself. It's not completely one. It has a feminine and a masculine aspect. And so his bridge is the anima, you know. And so the idea is, if you don't integrate the anima or the animus, and you sort of identify with the lower aspect, then you're really dealing. Now you could be dealing with this too, as this, he brought this up, then I'll shut up about this. You could be dealing not with your shadow, but with the if you're a man, you're not dealing with your shadow, but you're dealing with the animus of the anima, or you're dealing with the animus of the mother, you know, and vice versa. You're a woman, you're not dealing. Yeah, I think I just mixed that. If you're a woman, you could be dealing with the animus of the great mother, or the animus who's married to your shadow. That's it. You know, if you don't have a relationship with the animus, then he marries your shadow. And so you have a divine couple united in opposition to you, which is, you know, is absolutely not theoretical. You know, it shows itself in dreams, you know. Now, okay, so we're just going to go in here. This father world has turned against the mother world. Now, this is an archetypal as well as a personal conflict. And this is what I was going to mention, Fabio, that you seem to be more available to address both the archetypal and the personal, and I'm not. So that's a big gap in what I do with dream work. So now the idea here is that ego. What happened here was the woman is with the psychological man who represents her analyst, and he is sitting there waiting for a revelation. Okay, and the revelation is going to come that light shines in his eyes. Okay, and so he's sitting there waiting for it, and she has a diamond brooch. She doesn't have this in real, something of the highest value, and it has 5 diamonds in a row. Okay, a row, again, that means that has something to do with masculine, and the 5 is also a masculine number when it's used improperly. It also is the number of the Great Mother and of Hecate and of Juno, but when it's used improperly, it's not. It's an animus number, And she takes the highest value, which is the light of the sun, and she uses the highest value, which is the 5 diamonds, and she flashes the light into the analyst's eyes, or the psychological man's eyes, waiting for the revelation, and he thinks he got it. So she cheated. Now this is so the ego is in rebellion against the unconscious. The ego does not want, is resisting analysis here. This is the dreams of her, the second set of dreams of her analysis, and in this dream, the ego is this dream too. I just want to say is how unbelievably wise is this? It knows that she is trying to go through a natural process of healing. Okay, but it is showing her all of the psychopathologies of everyday life that are going to intrude on this natural process of transformation, both in the figure of the analyst, who has too high opinion of her. He seems to have a little bit of a crush on her. She's a very beautiful woman. And also the fact that her, like Christiana Morgan in the vision seminars, her visions are fabulous. And they really impress Adler. And so the dream is saying, oh, look at him. First of all, he's smitten with you. And secondly, he is very gullible. Oh, you bring these wonderful dreams, and he also thinks you're very cooperative. You're not cooperative at all. And I'll show you how uncooperative you are. You have a shadow. Okay. Did you know you have a shadow? Oh, you didn't. Well, that's too bad, because here's what the shadow is going to do. And, he's going to trick the analyst into thinking she's very cooperative, and she'll do whatever she can to do this. But actually, the shadow is going to do everything in its power to stop this process of natural transformation, which is going to come up with the 2 women analysts and the man who wears tree bark, because it is it's rebelling against God. This ego, which has been in the ascendant situation all this time, is the renegade Lucifer, where ego is supposed to be providing the dawn consciousness of phosphorus, the bringer of light. It instead becomes the renegade Lucifer, which also means the bringer of light. But this is someone who is in rebellion against the gods. And this really describes, I think, the realm that we've entered of not symbolic thinking, but directed thinking. It's very difficult to break out of that. So anyway, shows how the lengths the shadow can go to frustrate this process. And now the other thing was that that she uses her two dominant functions, thinking and sensation, to trick intuition, which is her inferior function. Okay, so she uses the light of the sun and her manipulative ego to her thinking and sensation to trick intuition. This was the psychological man who was the one who introduced her to Jung in the Labrum dream. Was a remarkably intuitive man, and who had never fallen for a trick like this. But her dream is telling her that Adler might. Okay, and so now that is there isn't too much more in that dream, and I think we want to keep moving here. So, but I do just think one of the things that it was, here's a couple things. I love what Adler does here, and you just listen to this, because he does this with every dream, and I think we should do it too. He tries to restate it. The dream says both to her and the analyst, look, here's a fool who's so willing to accept everything you say is a revelation of the unconscious that you can easily deceive him, and thus you can wriggle out of the unpleasant analytical process. So it says to the analyst, don't be too impressed by her apparent cooperative nature and by the revelatory character of her unconscious material. Isn't this human? I mean, the whole idea is, Jung did not have a very high opinion of spirit. Okay. He says, that spirit is a very convincing trickster. Okay. And because if it does not possess instinct, earth, and feeling, it is not a revelation. It needs to be something that provides the light, the spirit, or the meaning, to something that is related to earth, instinct, body, and to the feeling function, relatedness, and valuation. What is the highest value? And so spirit is a very convincing trickster. So anyway, that is pretty much describes that dream. So now we're going to go to the second dream, which is of the same night. They all are on the same theme, by the way. Let's keep that in mind. They all have the same theme, these three dreams. The second one on the same theme. I am being analyzed by two women who give me a word association test. I have the greatest difficulty in completing the test. Okay. So these are two very practical, down-to-earth women with sound instinct and well-developed common sense. Now, I was just telling Aline earlier, I'm none of those things. And so when I talk to the women in this group, I sort of, oh yeah, that's what he means by that, because I really sense that. So anyway, they're two very practical, down-to-earth women with sound instinct and well-developed common sense. So this was another criticism of the too intuitive theoretical approach, attitude of the analyst. One thing I did leave out, that since that psychological friend who she tricked, who was so incredibly intuitive, there was also a fear in her that he was going to get too far ahead of the situation with his intuition for her brooding and incubating, sleep on it type of assimilation and integration, something that the intuitive never does. This is the problem with the intuitive, is they where the sensate, when they finally get an intuition, it's like it has a great foundation in instinct and feeling, where when the intuitive gets a revelation, it's like Gary said, very ephemeral. How do I ground this and make it real and concrete in my practical existence? That's very difficult for the intuitive, because their unconscious function. See, especially an intuitive thinker, the two things that can save them, their redeemers, are sensation and feeling. And those are the two things that they are most fumbly and stumbly at, So that's the problem we face. So anyway, another criticism of the too intuitive theoretical attitude of the analyst, and it's also an appeal to the feeling function. Two women, very differentiated, by the way, because they're practical, down to earth, and they are therapists. They're in service to the inner world. That's what the original meaning of therapeuan means. That one who is in service to the inner world, as psychology means the love of soul. Keep that in mind. One thing that when Jung uses words, he tends to use them in there. He could write and read in Latin or Greek without any problem at all. And he tends to use those terms very precisely. So now here's the theme of this dream. Again, Adler does a really good job of summing this up in a statement. The statement of the dream: if you as a man are so easily deceived as this, then perhaps I had better go to a woman who will have better instinct and a more realistic appreciation of the situation. Now, the fact that there's two women there, again, when you see two of anything in a dream, that means it's approaching consciousness. There's one aspect of it that you've gotten. I'm starting to get it. But there's a much deeper aspect, which is under the earth, like what's under the sea on an iceberg, So, but they're both there, So, so this now the word association test. The women know what needs to be done, and they quickly get underneath the surface to discover her real problem. And but the dreamer has greatest difficulty in completing the test. But the women analysts discover her unconscious resistances easily, where the psychological friend was deceived easily by the flash of light. So the word association test is where actually they developed the lie detector out of Jung's word association tests. You've got a guy that you think robbed a bank, and so you just go in and say you just start saying dogs. What comes to your mind when you hear dog? And they say, oh, cat, and then they start going, just with these innocuous words. And then suddenly they'll say bank. And he stops, he doesn't know what to say because you suddenly brought up guilt or whatever it is in him that is having a problem. Well, Jung didn't do this for law enforcement purposes. He did it more for finding these unconscious resistances. How do I possibly find out what is what is the problem here? So now feeling was her inferior functions. So the two women also represent that function. So it's actually her door to the depths. Your inferior function is that open door to the unconscious because it is so unconscious, and anything that has not been defiled by ego consciousness is in its true natural state, and so it's permeable to nature, which is to the dream maker. It's very permeable, Now the only problem is if you try to bring that nature aspect up into your consciousness, like I try to fix something, you'll become a primitive, because your refined intuitive faction suddenly is now dealing with something you totally unfamiliar with, and it comes out in a very primitive way, often causes anger and outbursts, and particularly if you're a feeling function person and you try to participate in thinking. If you're an intuitive person and you're trying to find your way in a big city, you just tend to panic and lose it, So anyway, that was her second dream. So now the idea here was also this: the two women analysts find the problem immediately. So though the animus can be constructive and contribute to a psychological initiation, he also you're going to encounter the limits of the masculine principle here. You need the feminine principle. So the feminine, the animus is only a stepping stone. He's only a bridge to the higher self-realization of the feminine principle. Now, this is generally true with all women, but even more so in this case, where the animus side is as yet far from being properly integrated, and in this sense, the women analysts who confront her with the riddle of the association tests transcend the merely masculine animus spirituality as expressed in the figure of the psychological friend. And through it's corroborated by the duplication of the women, and it points to the emergence into consciousness of a so far unconscious content. And I would say this also, that the idea of Marion Woodman, spent her whole life, she was very similar to this woman, spent her whole life trying to be consciously feminine, because she knew that until she had the higher self-realization of the feminine principle, the higher animus could not act in her. She would always be confronted with the lower animus, which because you need to be consciously feminine. The animus is to be in service to the feminine principle, not its dictator, its boss, or its king. It is to be in service to the feminine principle. So now we're getting to the third dream. Time flies here. Okay, I'm talking to a man who's clothed in close-fitting garment of tree bark. His body to the neck, his arms to the wrists are enclosed in tree bark. And he says something, this is very typical of dreams. I can't, and then she doesn't hear what he says. But I can, and then she again doesn't hear what he says. And then she wakes up. Now, while she's still half asleep, she's guessing he says, I can't explain it to you, but I can let you look and see for yourself. So the dream represents the opposite position to the cheating dream. Now in this case, it's her revelation, not the psychological friends. But her revelation comes from the man clad in tree bark from his neck to his wrists. And he is saying, I can't explain anything to you, but I can let you look and see for yourself. So now she spoke of him as the tree man. So he is the tree. He's identical with the tree. And he expresses the numen of the tree. The snake in the tree of knowledge was the numen of the tree of knowledge. I mean, it was not, this snake is found not just in Genesis, it's found in a lot of places in the tree with the apple in it, and it is the numen. That was not did not come from Judaism, that image, by the way. Now, here the general symbols of the tree are relevant. This is the symbols of the tree, and the man clad in tree bark represents the tree. It's the central symbol of fertility and growth. And in the rituals and myths of the Great Mother, it's the place of birth, the seat of power, the life bearer, the redeemer, the place of transformation, rebirth, and renewal. Okay, so it was this that the patient needed and experienced in the man clad in tree bark. And to her, it represented rootedness in the earth, something that grows down into the earth. It's growing down into instinct and feeling, something that she was totally alienated from in her isolated spirit consciousness, totally removed from instinct and feeling. So it's something that grows down into the earth, grows down into the instinctive, grows down into the feeling of nature itself. And it, based on the strength of its roots, it manages to grow up into the sky. It's something continuous, which loses its leaves and then renews them again. It has a rhythm. It's rhythmic. And it's a movement of spring. It opens out like a fountain. It's the green world. So it's in this tree symbolism with this emphasis on rootedness, earth, growth, and renewal that she's going to find her salvation. So we have a very opposite atmosphere to the one of the cheating dream, with its premature, unrooted, hasty shortcuts, revelations through this tricking of the light flashing, and spiritual dishonesty, whereas the latter shows how things should not be done. The symbol of the tree shows the correct attitude of the earthiness of natural growth and natural transformation. It's earthiness. And it also shows of not forcing anything. I can't explain it to you, but I can show it to you. And waiting for things to happen of their own. And this all comes in association where don't ask for explanations. Be quiet and watch for yourself. Sleep on it. Now, this is symbolic thinking. This is the incubation, brooding aspect. So when the tree man says, I can't, but I can, she felt what he was saying is he will never be able to do anything she asks him to do. I can't do anything you ask me to do. So once again, it's not a question of doing, but of not doing, of learning from observing, and not of expecting revelations or answers, but of asking the right questions of the images which we receive. So it becomes evident how much the figure of the tree man, the numen of the tree, is opposed to the intuitive credulity of the psychological friend. And whereas her intuitive animus is in danger of running ahead of her power of genuine realization, the earth animus is firmly rooted. He draws his strength out of the depths of nature and of earth and of the instinctive realms and the feminine realms, by the way, the wordless realms. Very different from the shifty airiness of the man expecting a revelation, so easily deceived. the tree animus seems to build a potential bridge between her masculine intellectual attitude, because he's a man himself, but he's a man clad in tree bark, and a future rootedness in the earth, the prototype of feminine symbolism. This view seems confirmed by the dream of the women analysts. The noumen of the tree is masculine. The tree is the self, the union of opposites. And that it is male here, again, shows that she is the intuition of the self. Now, she is going to meet the wise old woman in the next dream. The masculine tree noumen speaks to a lack of differentiation of her masculine side at this point, even though he is a man clad in tree bark. And now, on meditating on the realization that the tree would let her look and see for herself, the question uppermost in her mind was how the tree managed to grow up and down at the same time, something she couldn't do. How could it fix itself so firmly in the earth that the gales, the winds above, could blow and not overturn it? So this is that still point, and it sort of answers this question of her stoniness in the first, where she's this mountain that's helpless against the mad and malignant winds. So the tree is the symbol of the union of opposite. It has its roots deep in the unconscious, but has the potential of reaching the heights of greatest consciousness. So it points to a union of the mother and father world, of the green world, new vegetation, and of natural transformation, and of the blessed greenness of Hildegard den Bingen, the viriditas, rises like a fountain, throwing its life, giving waters up in the sky, and drawing its strength from the waters of the depths. It's a new hope of growth after the sterility of her fake initiation. And then she's going to make the two drawings, which we'll look at. We'll have to discuss those next time, but the two drawings are of first of all, we looked at this one of the uncomfortable tree. Now the uncomfortable tree is leafless. There's no leaves, but there are 12 leaves blowing, and there's 6 vultures and 6 arms pulling down. This is the symbol of great tension, and of sterility of the of her first initiation. And then she says, just like she said when she had the poem about the mad malignant winds, then she had the vision of the boy who sees the void, but is not scared of it. He's inquiring and inquisitive, and goes on a quest to find out, to get a map of this black void that she was facing. So this inner animus is going to find the map of that world for her, So like she had that story at the end, she also had this one, which is of the comfortable tree. Now here, the comfortable tree, the roots are deep in the earth. The tree is fully leafed, and instead of vultures in the upper part of the tree is a phoenix. This is the bird of rebirth. Or it could be a heron, but it's the bird. The heron brings the child, or the stork brings the child, and then here is the wise old woman. This is not her. She has a maternal shape, is what he says. That she is shaped as a mother would be shaped, not as a more a nymph-like or whatever. And I'll just mention quickly the 2 dreams we'll go over next time, because they're both very interesting. One is that she goes to 3 churches with the 2 men. Okay. And the first church is the ugly shrine. It's a little shrine. Now, and then she sees the great cathedral. The two men don't see the great cathedral. They only see the ugly shrine. And then the third church she walks up to, she's attracted to it by music, you know. And then a woman, a lay person, she's not a member of the religious order, opens up the double doors, and in there's a forest, you know, and invites her in, but she won't go in. So she won't go into the ugly shrine. This represents both in the church and in the feminine, in her feminine soul, what she needs. The first church, the ugly shrine, is the conventional one, the one of conventionality. And that is the one of just unconscious acceptance. You know, Jung said that the religion of this age is conventionality. You know, it's just unconscious acceptance of my role, you know, no questions asked, okay? You know, and the second one is the collective attitude of the great cathedral. Now, this one involves more of a conscious decision to accept the values of this one, okay? It's a little higher up, high church. She was Anglican, and Anglican is a really kind of a neat religion because it's not Catholic, but it's not Protestant. You know, it's sort of a little between. And then the third church is the one of the individual way, you know, of going into the forest, you know, and but she can't accept any of them. No, the reason she couldn't go into the second church was because she didn't have a proper hat. She didn't have the proper collective attitude, and you needed to have one to go in there, you know. And then the next dream of that series is one where she's got to fit a part. She's going to make a garden, but it has to fit in a circle, and she needs to know she has to draw the circle first, which creates its own center before she can fit in her garden in the pattern. Her own pattern needs to be fit into a circle, but she first needs something to draw the circle, and she can't find it, you know. So anyway, that's now like I say, I think when we get done with this, we'll go back to the fairy tales, because I just say that was so delicious, so you know. But I just think that these are going to be somewhat informing us. You know, I just going through some of those fairy tales, how beautiful they were, of the bear shirt girls, you know, of Sleeping Beauty, of Rose Red, of Vasilissa. All of those were just so beautiful. But anyway, Gary, I'll just let's just see if anybody has any comments for the time we have left here.
You know, one question that I have is that, you know, we see this dream progression with the incredible symbology. You know, from the outside, you can just see it unfolding, and it's just amazing. But, you know, it doesn't seem like he really talks about her experience of this. I mean, do you think it was, I mean, that she understood it, or that she felt it? Or, I mean, what was her experience that, you know, would allow the progression? Do you have any opinions?
Yeah, he thought that, first of all, her dreams were speaking of movement. I mean, that's what she said in the first thing, that the first aspect of the dreams and the analysis, that what was so her initial reactions. Remember, this is only her third session, is that the hope that she brought was there was movement, where before I was frozen, and there was in stony. I was a stone, I was a rock. So what she's seeing initially is movement. But I think what we're going to see in this, you know, this quick progression really is through this dream series, what we're going to see is this. This is what Joseph Campbell says. What you do with the dream series is the same thing you do when you're interpreting, when they found out how to, I think it was through what was the stele of Hammurabi, you know, they were able to interpret the Egyptian hieroglyphs, you know, the idea was that they would, you would start to be able to fill in the blanks, you know, of what was going on, you know, and he says the same thing as a person who has very bad handwriting, you know, you can't read it, it's almost illegible, but you look and say, well, I know that word is gray, so that's the way she makes Y's. So now I can, whenever I see that from now on, I'll know that's a Y, you know. And so the idea is that through seeing these different hieroglyphs of dreams, we're going to be able to see what the whole pattern looks like. And, you know, I mean, like what he describes it, it's a mosaic, you know, and when you're done, there will be a image there, which is going to be hard to picture, but at least we're going to have a flavor for it.
Yeah. Well, you know, so maybe it was, you know, I can see that, because it's like if you can bring a hopeful expectancy, and if you can then feel any movement, then, you know, I think then you start getting all the synchronicities that, you know, allow it.
You know, Christiana Morgan in Visions, she had these absolutely fabulous visions, but she never seemed to integrate them very well. You know, I mean, I just hate to say, you know, what happened to her. I mean, she was an alcoholic and she eventually drowned in a lake, this wonderful, wonderful woman, you know, who everybody in the world was in love with too. She was so beautiful.
So Elaine, would you all like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm hopeful that this will unfold to give us a real flesh and blood person. You know, I can see the potential there because she's so willing. But, you know, Craig, you were talking about the feeling function, and for myself, I'm feeling and intuitive, hardly any thinking there. Or sensing, even though I'm kind of an artist. But you put me in a city, even one that I know, and I will have a hard time finding my way around it, getting into that thinking function. I, you know, only see landmarks. If I didn't have GPS, I would have never been able to manage. But moving now in my later life to a new city has really shown me that there is a thinking function there somewhere. So I live in hopes.
Yeah, my wife. Now see that my wife is and I think John and I were just talking about. She's an INFP, and you know, so was Robert Johnson, by the way, and Jung was a INTJ. You know, and when Johnson went to meet him, and he said, I didn't know it for 30 years till 30 years later. He says, Jung talked to me in the feeling function, even though it was his inferior function. He talked to me in the feeling function, which is very hard for me to do. So, you know, my wife tends to think I'm a machine gun, you know, or a chainsaw. She says, you just sound like a chainsaw. She says, slow down, you know. And so yeah, it is a communication issue, really. Now I couldn't find my way even in a city I live around, and my wife's daughter, who's a sensei, her husband says, are you using the GPS? And I said, yeah. She says, do you even know what street you're on? And I said, no. And he says, well, let Sarah drive, you know, her sister or her daughter. So anyway.
Fabio, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so hi everybody. I don't know if I met everybody. It's the first time I'm on Sunday. And I had the impression, well, I think Craig said about the shadow. It's just a comment that came to my mind. When we study the case studies, we realize that shadow actually protects neuroses and symptoms, because the person comes to the consulting room, to the, looking for help and telling us about the problems they have and all the situations their lives. And we see that we need to access the shadow to start moving all the process around. And it goes, well, it answers what maybe Gary said about the dreams. The dreams, they come during the process, and we see something happening, moving around. Situations in the daily life, or the problem is not the same anymore, and the person just starts to change the discourse. The way the person brings the situation is different. Of course, there is a time for that. We need time. That's the treatment is like that. So I just thought about that. I'm also a very thinking person, very much. I like case studies. I like numbers. I like to read about it, all this sort of things, and searching around. So, and it's very hard to work with intuition. So I try to practice using, let's say, symbology, studying tarot cards. Here in Brazil, we have a lot of religions, Afro descendant religions and folklore and all that. So I try to really to get into it, just to understand better the patients and the clients. And one last thing that just thoughts. I thought about the collective unconscious as well, because the topic, the symbol, the tree, it's very interesting, powerful. And nowadays we are very much worried about nature, about Amazon forests, about the preservation and all that countries are talking about. And I don't know if you watched it, but last week we had the Jubilee, and we yes, and was so interesting. The Queen coming and touching the globe, and lighting up the tree was beautiful scene. That symbol as well. That's very interesting. How we need that, and maybe we forgot, or we are not working with that anymore. Too much logos and not symbols. But we're seeing those rituals, like the Jubilee, for instance, those symbols coming back. And I had the impression, it was so interesting, the scene when she comes from the castle, and she comes very slow in direction to the globe, and she touches the globe with wearing white gloves, and a way lights up in front of her towards the tree. That's so symbolic.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that just my thoughts. I don't know if it's all right.
It was almost a serpentine way. I mean, the lights
Yes.
went
Yes.
like this and then
Beautiful.
went up. Whoever did it, it was someone who had it had a aesthetic arrest. That's what James Joyce says art does. Is that when you see it, you're stunned into aesthetic arrest, where you're suddenly just slightly thrown out of time and space. And I certainly felt that when I saw that.
Yeah.
I've got
And also the beacons as well.
Yeah.
They lit beacons of fire in different parts of, I think, the world. I don't know if only in UK, but I think in different countries, lighting up the beacon. It's so symbolic and so important. I think we shouldn't let this die. We need to keep this alive, because that's what keeps us, isn't it? We are part of nature anyway, and symbols are part of all this.
Yeah. I just want to mention one word whenever I see words that sometimes I always have to look them up, even ones I'm familiar with. But one was hubris, or this hubris, and that is where what she was experiencing was to claim something of your own that doesn't belong to you. That's what hubris is. And it is also to emphasize victory and not reconciliation, or, of relatedness, and it also is to symbolize perfection and not completion. Well, those also, what we're describing on this side, is the symbolic artistic way of the soul, and the other side is that side of that separates us from it a little bit, But what her trying to trick with the revelation, the hasty shortcuts. Now, this is one of the dark sides of the overreach of ego, to try to get their revelations in LSD or something like that. It is sort of a Promethean stealing of fire, when they ask Jung about it, he says, I would hate to go to the place where colors come from. That's what he said. And everybody said, well, why would you hate to go to the place that colors come from? It's because it's a place that men should not trod upon, because anyway, that was beautiful, Fabio. Fabio, by the way, is from Sao Paulo and in Brazil. And by the way, I was just mentioning to someone that you are unbelievably fluent in English. I just can't believe it.
Thank you, Craig, about that. Thank you.
So, Kat, would you like to go next?
I don't really have much to say. I mean, I just love listening to her dreams. I like the fact, like what you said, Craig. In fact, the dream about her shining the light in the animist's face and him being dazzled by her beauty and her dreams, is a barrier to get to the truth as such, override the trickery. No, I just find it fascinating, and I can't wait to hear what actually happens with her at the end of this sort of process. So no, that's it for me. Thank you.
It's quite a journey, it really is. And like I say, the only frustrating thing about it is that there's, unlike the fairy tale, there's no resolutions, but there is movement. I guess that's all we have to cling to. There's the gates of heaven never open,
John?
Thank you. I apologize in advance for my internet connection. It's not that good. And Fabio Bongia, it's nice to meet you. You must have joined like when I was away for those 2 weeks, but I'm just constantly amazed, by dreams, by her dreams, and what they intimate and what they also show her, like what I learned about initially about dreams being an X-ray picture of what's going on with a person at that time. And I don't know if I'm correct in any of this, because it seems like every time I think I understand something, it's usually wrong, but especially how, the dreams can, show her where she is, and then also intimate the outcome of it, which I guess I just said. But the dreams, the dream she mentioned with the tree, the first tree, the uncomfortable tree, which is what, to me, it seems the process of analysis is. It's uncomfortable because we have to bear that tension between the two opposites, and the way I understand it is when you bear that tension, that's when the transcendent function can come through, while the second wasn't a dream, the comfortable tree she felt that she had to draw, I thought was very positive as well, because that to me it's her unconscious showing her what the process can be, what it can turn out to be, and when she was talking to the gentleman, and he said, I can't, and then she couldn't hear what he said, but I can, I think that's, at least for me, that intimates my own process, is especially with analysis. And I also find that to be a warning dream also, or at least it seems to me that the brilliance of this material is that that's also a warning dream for her analyst, is that she can't be told. The analyst just can't say, oh, this is what your dream means, and then she can go out and have it transformed, and she's fixed just by learning what it means. You have to experience it. She has to go through the whole process. And I just find it fascinating that, the unconscious picked up on that. And at least to me, I see it. And like I said, I reserve the right to be wrong, but, that's to me why the importance, I think, is what's unique about Jungian analysis, is that most analysts are in analysis themselves. So they don't project their own material into their clients' dreams, or at least that's the way I understand it. And it just seems that he is an amazing understanding of himself, that he can pick up on that. It's like, oh, no, I'm too enamored by what's coming up, with her. And she sensed it. Her unconscious sensed it and brought it up in the dream for him. But also, too, when I saw the comfortable tree, I immediately thought, and I don't remember when we started the beginning of the book what her religious knowledge was, but I instantly thought of the Buddha, where he reached enlightenment meditating under the Bodhi tree. That's it. The fact that she was sitting serene, that's immediately what came to mind. And I think I find that so fascinating, because she could have thought of any image to draw for the comfortable tree, but it intimates that it's going to be a positive outcome, at least to me, the positive outcome, because the next picture she drew could have been the tree breaking apart, or the limbs being ripped off and the roots being ripped off, which hopefully, if he's an intuitive analyst, he would have said, let's not do analysis right now, or let's not work with this. Let's go to something else. Because I think of a dream, and I shared this before. I heard it in a Jungian group on a case study where it was the dream of a puer, and he came into analysis. And the first dream he had in analysis was he was in a boat or on a raft in the ocean, and the raft was breaking apart. And the analyst said, you know what, this is not the right time for you. Go out, get a job, get a bank account, start doing the first half of life stuff before you start picking apart your ego and letting the flood of the unconscious contents come through. And that's, when I hear people talk about, oh, I dream, but they don't mean anything, or people don't understand, to me, I'm blown away. How could you not look at this and just see the sacredness of it, or the wisdom of the images that whatever it is brings up for us to do, and each of it, it's unique for each of us. I am just blown away, and I want to know more about her relationship with her father, because it seems like a lot of that's bound up in this because of how the analyst was taken with, and maybe I don't understand it correctly, or I'm thinking about it wrong, but how the analyst then immediately was attracted to her. I just find interesting in that, the man wearing the tree bark, I just find, I don't know, I don't understand enough about it, but I just find that interesting. I hope we get more of it, because I'd like to learn that. And interesting when you mentioned, you got a little bit ahead, Craig, and talked about her other dream where the music, it was what attracted to her. I thought about the beginning, how it talked about her father, and while he was a teacher, his extra professional activity was music. So I don't know, just what came into my mind, but I love these Sundays. They're amazing. And every time I think I have something, I realize I don't, there's so much more to learn. In fact, I'll share a funny story that's a bit self-revealing, but I was in analysis. My first time in analysis was in Florida with my analyst, and she had a bookshelf behind her, and she didn't have a lot of books on it, but some of them were Jungian books, some of them were other ones. But at the very bottom, laying on its side, was a book called The Magic Eye. And I always wanted to ask her about it, but I never did. And over my period of analysis with her, I'd come in and I'd think about that book, and I'm like, that must be some special book you get when you graduate, the Jungian Institute in Zurich. That is the Magic Eye. It's the book of interpretation that is going to teach you all this stuff. So finally, I asked her, I said, hey, what's that book over there? And she pulled it out. She goes, oh, this. And she gives it to me, and I open it up. And it's those old 3D 3D prints that they used to have. They have to stare at them for a long time, and then an image pops out. And I had built it up to be this huge thing. And I was like, oh, that's it, I just think, but then at the same time, that's exactly what it is too. You know, they stare into our dreams and find the hidden images and tease it out. So yeah, my thinking is usually misguided. It's my best thinking that gets me into my worst situations, I think. And when I just go with the process and let it happen, things turn out for the best. Yeah, I think I've rambled on long enough, but I'm just so grateful for this. Thank you guys for doing this meeting every week. I really look forward to it. Thank you.
Great observations, John.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention was that you know, the fact that how ingenious the dream is, because it knows exactly what's going on. It knows this dynamic, and it knows it's showing you how the shadow is going to interfere. So I was so it was so enlightening to hear Fabio talk about when the shadow it interferes in the analysis, because it almost inevitably interferes, and both on both sides, you know, because it's so hard to be fully conscious when you're doing anything, you know. It is like my shadow, I think, is in control of me way more than I think it is, you know.
Kevin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I can. Yes, the shadow. At least the way I understood the shadow from reading Carl Jung, and also the way I understand his quote is that where he says the sole purpose of human being is to kindle a light of something in the mere darkness. I don't know. For me, the way I see the shadow is where the cosmic spark is situated. So if one can keep digging on the shadow, it will dig a hole deep enough that it will include the anima, it would include the wise old man, and also it would include the cosmic spark. So when I think of Jung saying like going through shadow, I don't think of him saying just the shadow part, but I think of him saying what is still prima materia. And the dynamic between we have an analyst and we have you can say patient. Both are introverted thinking type. I'm also an introverted thinking type. So introverted thinking type deal with the world in a conceptual internal framework, which keeps changing. So my framework keeps changing every day, pretty much. But because of that, the extroverted feelings is repressed. And so the feeling function is like a big whale for us. You know, we can't digest it. If we start eating, it's too much, we can't digest it. You know, we become Romeo and Juliet. But what I was gonna say is that I find it interesting in that the tree is a male figure. The tree in human is a male figure rather than the nymph-like nature spirit. I don't know. It would be interesting to see if anyone has a comment on that, because I don't know. Yesterday, I spent a good deal trying to understand the female aspect and the projection we have. Like when I'm in the nature, I have a projection. I feel like the nature is alive. So I'm trying to find what is this projection in me that keeps this nature alive. And what I got yesterday was, I think it's the nymph from my reading. The nymph is the nature spirit, you know, which is embedded in either stone, river, or forest. But in this case, it is a male animus figure, which is sort of grounded. So if any comment to that, I would appreciate.
I was thinking about Apollon and Daphne,
Yeah.
where Apollon tried to rape Daphne, and she's running, and her father, who is in the river, saved her, and she was transformed to a tree.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's a parallel in some way.
Yes, it is.
I'm also wondering why this animus
become get tree barks on, and it's some kind of oppositing thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Ava. That's very important. I want to of the tree aspect, you know, but I want to say one thing about the shadow, Kevin, is that now the shadow is darkness, but it's the darkness cast by the light of the ego, you know. So it's the darkness in ego. It is semi-divine because it has some connections with the inner world that we don't. But it is really that side of the ego which we're blind to. Now there's another darkness, and that's not the shadow. That is the chthonic world, you know, the chthonic realm of the Great Mother, of the earth and of nature, of mute nature. You know, I always, you know, when I say to my, you know, I'm talking, I say, I guess I'm not going to talk to the body. It really has nothing to say. And it says, it tells me, we don't have a lot to say, but we are, you know, we are far wiser than you are, you know, don't denigrate us. But the darkness, I think that I often see people, and I don't, that they try to confuse the darkness of the shadow. And you know, here's the darkness of the shadow. You get up in the morning with a resolution that you're not going to overeat today. And then you end up eating 12 boxes of Girl Scout cookies before you go to bed. Now, who did that? In the morning, your conscious intention was, I'm not going to do that, but you did it anyway. So who did it? It wasn't that one in the morning. Somebody did it, you know. That's kind of more the shadow, and it operates in different other ways. But there is also the light of consciousness, but there's the night, darkness of night. And you know, there's this beautiful poem that God says that, or the creator, not God, but the creator says that night is by far his favorite daughter, because he learns much more from her than he does from the light of the day. You know, there's this aspect of the the night is rich. You know, the night, Nietzsche loved to write about the night. The night is also a sun, you know, S-U-N. And then he also said that at night, all fountains speak louder. Have you ever noticed that when you're out at night, you can hear the burbling of the creek better than you can during the day? And he says, my heart is also a fountain. So he can hear his bubbling heart better in the darkness. But that is a darkness that is not barren. You know, it is very rich and fertile, you know, and it's not the shadow.
But in this case, I'm so interested how, what was the solution on this dream with the bark? I can't.
Well, what was the resolution of the dream of the tree bark? Well, you know, basically that she what she said was that, what Adler said anyway, is that
Yes.
she realized that the way forward was not one of doing, but of incubating and brooding. You know, of Wu Wei. You know, this is, I think Angelique knows a lot about Wu Wei, you know, the doing by not doing. In other words, through through waiting for growth. Like for instance, what it really reminds me of is you take a plant and you put it on the windowsill, but it can't ever get the sun where it's sitting, so it all grows towards the light. You know, that's I think kind
But
of
the point of the bark, I got.
Oh, the bark? Oh, the point
Yes.
of the bark. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, it just shows he's a tree Newman. He is the voice of the tree. Like for instance, my Newman is a
Okay, that I understand.
woodpecker. You know, it's not tree bark, a man in tree bark, but it's a woman who's a woodpecker. You know, I mean, she's a spirit bird, but she lives by the she never leaves the rooted thing. She's a tree, you know, she is a tree woman, you know, so that's also the point of her being a woodpecker is she's a spirit, but she's also a related to the rooted thing. Well, we better keep going. We're not
Yeah,
gonna get everybody.
Angelique, would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, Craig,
Yeah.
for today's very, very many aspects to look at, and also my experience is the compassion of the dream. Always the dreams come for the people you are helping with such a compassion, and they come so humane, so perceptive and so sensitive into, and they guide both of us, so they don't hurt, they always heal, they have a little bit of humor,
Always.
they always bring a doubt, so they shake something of theirs or of me in my analysis, but not too much. So that is something that I think none of us as analysts or clients can ever achieve, but the dream can. So this is something so exquisite. The more you work with them, the more you understand how amazingly refined they can be. No human can be like that. That's the one. The other is, in regards to the tree, I think that my understanding from any transformation journey, either analysis or initiation into the mysteries or spiritual emergence, they all seem to start from the dark of the earth through the vegetative. So the mysteries of Eleusis are the first steps of initiation. They are not the animalic, they are not the instinct. The instinct comes similar to an analysis, much later appears in the dreams. What starts first is from a past, from in the depths of matter where nothing seems to move. Remember how frozen this woman is, the Medusa. So from something that does not move in the midst of darkness, in the depths of the soil, in the earth, the vegetative starts making its appearance. So it's the first step in consciousness through initiation as well as transformation. It's and the qualities of the vegetative are very specific. It looks as if it doesn't do anything. So if you watch my garden, nothing seems to happen right away. But in 2 days, the plants are somewhere. So connecting with the vegetative is, I think, the first step. And so that's how I feel the dreams. And the vegetative is also part of our nervous system. The autonomous nervous system used to be called vegetative in neurology. And it's no accident because it takes place without our volitional, it's not directed by us. So our intention has no effect whatsoever on the beats of our heart. So the vegetative is what moves the universe, us included. And it's a very important aspect in our neurology, but it's the unconscious world. It's the realm of Persephone and Hades. So So everything starts from the vegetative, and and also my mind goes to the central channel and the Ida and Vigala in the Indian way tradition of and Tibetan way of healing. So the central channel is a tree. In Kambala also, it's a tree. So that tree starts from, it cannot start from the client's or the initiate's choice. You can have the intention to have the transformation, but everything takes place from the unconscious to begin with. And you just have to allow to connect with that vegetative and be humbled enough to recognize it within you in order for the process to take flight higher, like her tree, and see what's, and start looking at the spirit or whatever that means through the matter, and you know, the seed, the sap that starts moving up in the tree. So she's yet in the roots, because that's where all things start, and they start from a greater power than herself. But then she needs to connect to that vegetative power, otherwise nothing will take place. And it seems that she sees that process, and I think it's not an illusion or a vision. She actually sees her nervous system going through the change, like in Kundalini transformations. So dreams with trees, people who have spiritual emergencies, the vegetative world is at the very beginning of a spiritual emergence, because everything starts from the vegetative and expands. So she's actually watching different possibilities of vegetative emergence. She's touching an aspect of the unconscious that is rooted in the power of the vegetative, as well as your nervous system at the same time.
A quick question. So were you saying rigidity or virginity?
Yeah, could you just spell it in the chat or?
Yeah.
I think she meant vegetative, like vegetation.
Vegetative.
Yes,
From
put
where
it,
vegetable comes. Yes, let me
Yeah,
just
just
write.
spell it, yeah.
put it in the text,
Yes.
chat, yeah.
Yeah. The
Oh,
vegetative.
vegetative, yes,
Oh,
okay, yeah,
I'm
perfect.
so
got it.
sorry.
Perfect.
I should
No,
have-
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Right.
so
Yeah,
sorry.
now-
and
My accent always. Yes,
that's so,
yes. That's why
everything, yeah, that was very resonant
Yeah,
with
great.
me very much, so. Thank you so much. Did you, how about Charles? Is Charles?
Yeah, we
I'm
need Ava as well.
Oh, and Ava, yeah.
Ava, you want to go next?
I was just thinking about this Apollon and Daphne. I don't think I have any more. Maybe I could say this Ullman method, if I couldn't mention it again. I was in a group, we had 2.5 hours working, and I feel that we are helping the dreamer to do the imagination in that kind of, we are going through the dream very carefully and in detail and so on. And that was my reflection today when I was totally tired when we had done it. Because I haven't been in such a group for a while, and I almost forgot how much energy we had to use. Okay,
Great, thank you. Charles?
I know this has nothing to do with anything, but I just have to say it because it'll bother me for the rest of the day. Craig said something about Egyptian hieroglyphs being decoded by comparison to the Code of Hammurabi stela, those Rosetta Stone, that by comparing it to ancient Greek.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's just, it'll just bother me unless I say something. But other than that, I just enjoyed listening today. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And I just say something about what Angelique said too, is the healing power of the dreams. you know, my wife and I haven't had so many lately, but even nightmares, you know, a nightmare is basically what the unconscious saying, or your soul or the psyche saying that it's experiencing pain because of us, and it is thinking the only way it can wake us up is by us experiencing the same pain it's experiencing, you know, which is a way to look at the nightmare. It's communicating to us we are experiencing an emergency here, and you don't get it. You know, how do we get through to you? You know, maybe if we send you this, it'll wake you up or whatever. And the other thing, Angelique, you were mentioning, and I forgot, the other kind of darkness is the one of the mortificatio, the death aspect, which is the one of the you know, the vegetative mysteries are really the mystery, I think, that is closest to the psyche. You know, I mean, it really is. I mean, because it represents you know, I'm just saying in this, we live in an age where the spiritual and is so overvalued, where the vegetative mysteries are closer to our essence and our instinctual aspects. But anyway, well, thank you for everybody. It was we'll just pick this up next time, and I think next week, the dream session on Saturday, we can have it on any other day than Saturday next week. So if you guys want to just tell me Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, whenever, but I'll be on the road on Saturday, but I'll be here Sunday. And then I think the following Sunday is one where everyone just shares whatever they are working on, or just any experiences they have that they want to share, you know. So anyway, well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys all next time.
No
Bye-bye.
dream session next Saturday then.
Yeah, it'll be, we can have it a day, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m.
Okay.
So you guys just tell me what works. Okay. See y'all later.